Hey guys, welcome to my Overexplained Katowice 2021 YouTube series. We're going to be taking a look right now at Reynor versus Zest, game number 2 in the finals of this tournament. Let's jump right in. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube and check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/archonse2. Thank you guys. Alright, so we are playing PvZ on Lightshade. Zest again going for a fast scout here with this probe. Faster than normally you would do like a 14 pylon scout. He's sending out a probe even before the pylon is out on the field here. So I've seen this in game 1. He is going for this fast scout, kind of just looking for a 12 pull pretty early it seems. Alternatively, he can be going for a hatchery block in case the Zerg was deciding to do a hatch first kind of strategy. So it can serve as two purpose. Blocking the hatchery plus scouting for the 12 pool. Does opt for a gateway follow-up here, nothing crazy. Goes for gas, pretty standard from there, 17 gas. Does chrono boost the course, as you would expect, after the pylon is finished, right before the gateway started. Zerg goes and takes the third base instead of the natural since it was blocked. Protoss sees there is no 12 pool, of course, and he is going to bother the Zerg by trying to gather the minerals, and this is going to create a little bit of an income disparity in favor of the Protoss player, as you can see from the graph. Alright, so next is going down at 20. We will be seeing most likely a core at 20 as well, following standard play. There it is, 20 core. Okay, let's take a look. We should be seeing another gas coming in here. There it is, 21 gas. Pylon should be dropping now at 22. There it is. Okay, so he is favoring saturation on the minerals. Looks like, hold up, let me take another look. Made a quick look here. He actually did do a slight pull here. I do want to commentate on that here, that little fact. Look what he does here. He was prioritizing the minerals at 16, but he does pull off here for a moment. So he ends up, let's take a look at this. He ends up chrono boosting here, which I didn't catch in game 1 if he did this pattern. You can see. So he chrono boosts here. I don't know if this was a mistake. This looks like he's going to be supply blocked, but we'll take a look. He chrono boosts here as soon as the second assimilator is done, the second gas. And then he pulls one guy off of minerals in favor of the gas. So he's at 15 out of 16 on the minerals, full gas saturation, and then he cues or rallies this probe to make the Stargate here. I'm curious to see if he gets supply blocked from here. Maybe he won't. Oh, just barely not. Very impressive. As you would expect from a pro player. Just barely not supply blocked. Okay. So this probe is going to be on time to make the Stargate. There it is. Again, he does forego the warp gate research. He does delay it, rather. Not completely forgoes it. Until the Stargate is down, then he resumes that. He should be making a... Let's see. Well, if you make some probes from here... He's going to be going for that second gateway follow-up soon to close this wall at some point. Let's see what he does from here.
Glory to the Daemon.
Again, that's the scouting shade. He sends out the adept shade just to see what's out there. It's not really committed shade, just to give you a little bit of scouting information. If there was a flood of lings coming in and he's going to worry about something along those lines. He is queuing up a Stalker here, which is interesting. He is going for Oracle. Okay, I see why he's going for the Stalker. He wants to basically prevent scouting, because the Oracle obviously cannot attack the Overlord and prevent that scouting Overlord from going inside a Protoss' base. Plus, the Stalker kind of sells a Twilight build. Usually, Adept Stalker is a tell that it could be it could be Adept Glaives, could be Twilight, could be DTs or Charge Lot, something along those lines. So Oracle is out. He's gonna use the Oracle to... He's gonna show the Oracle to the Zerg player just to kill this Overlord. Okay. So we do have another power line down. Let's take a quick look at this just for the series. Okay, so the pylon's going down around 337 here, around 49 supply. Basically the timing of once the second Stargate unit is in production. In case people are curious about pylon timings, I know I am sometimes, especially around the 4-minute mark. I'm kind of curious about some of these pylon timings rather than just drop down. At some point, you do have enough minerals to just drop down the pylons 2 at a time. In the mid-game, it's not really a big deal, but more so in the earlier mid-game, I'd say around the 4-minute mark, when you can't afford to drop down pylons 2 at a time, you kind of do need to be careful with how supply-heavy Protoss is to get these pylons down correctly. Since pylons only give you 8 supply, and Protoss units kind of take up half that supply sometimes per unit. So we have double Oracle, we have 2 Depths, and a Stalker. Zest is opting for that third base around 406. Obviously the pylon to protect the Depths. Okay, so he does warp in 2 more Depths. So that's 4 Depths in total. What is he gonna get done here? Gets a single worker kill. Maybe second, there it goes. 2 workers, nothing crazy.
Oracle perceiving.
Okay, so he does make a third Oracle here as well. This is an interesting build.
Glory to the
so he adds a Forge and another Gateway, around 440. I was curious to see, I thought this was going to be a Twilight here. Not for Depths, but more so for the follow-up Templar Archives and Charge.
The enemy has discovered us.
So he's doing some worker harassment, doing a good job, poking in. So he ends up getting 7 worker kills, which is actually huge. Very good, very successful harassment here. Very successful. Shading into that third base here. Just being annoying with the stasis traps, dropping down 4 more gateways here. Does go for +1, does go for charge. What the Templar, excuse me, with the Twilight Council being dropped here. Let's take a quick look. I might have missed it. What time did that Twilight Council get dropped down? My bad casting here. It was definitely... Normally you would see the Twilight Council and the Forge simultaneously. He does not do that in this game. He does add gases 3 and 4. A little bit late, albeit not that late. But then he drops down... Yeah, look, he has the money for it. That's why it is slightly delayed, but he was probably just microing stuff. So he does drop it around 456. Definitely a little bit later than you could be dropping it. Anyways, it's pretty irrelevant. Fades in, hits around 5 minutes. Does some damage to the Zerg drone line. Where are the Zerglings?
We meet our fate.
Nowhere to be seen. So Zest is doing a great job here. He's already in a good spot. 3 bases. He has basically the same amount of workers that Zerg has. Okay, then he opts for the charge. This is a very good follow-up. Charge lots. Adds a shield battery to the third. It's pretty much impervious so far. Adds a Templar Archive. Add 100% completion of the Twilight Council. Around 540. Adds a Robo around 550 as soon as the Templar Archives has started. Adds that Robo. Then he adds gases 5 and 6 at the third base here. So let's take a look at his gateway count here. So he's got 5 gateways in production. So in total, he's looking at... Oh, that's the barcode. Okay, so he's only on 8 gate. Actually, not as many as I was expecting. He's on 8 gate. This is more of the macro version of this, unless he has more. Okay, so it does add 2 more gates. He is going to 10 gates. That makes more sense. Or 3 base. You normally 8 gate is what you can afford on 2 bases. He's on 3, so you're expecting about 10 to 12 gates. That sounds about right. Maybe a little bit less considering the fact that you will be doing other technologies as well, like the Stargate tech as an option, or the Robo for servers and such. Does make an Archon with his first wave of Templar. He does forego Storm temporarily, it seems. You go for the Archons. He might be doing a follow-up push here, around 7 minutes. Does use Revelation to push back the Creep Tumors, which is very good. You do see a War Prism in production. Do not see a Observer first. This is a War Prism to get the immediate Warpins. Sometimes people do go for the Observer first. I'm one of them, but it does delay your offensive Warpins. Oh, I lied. Did go Observer first. Didn't he? Yeah, I did. Did go Observer first. I did miss that. I apologize. Jeez, did sneak it out there. So interesting. His army movement is pretty interesting here. He is just pushing back the Creep Tumors so far. A bunch of Archons. Does have a good army, I'd say, to fight this Roach Ravager force. There are no Hydras on the field. What is the Queen count? The Queen count is only 6. Surprisingly, not a lot of Queens here for the Zerg player.
We embrace the glory of battle.
So we only have +1, no +2 started. It's not in production. You have +1 armor starting now. Interesting choice. Very surprising. Normally you would see +2 weapons, conventionally. Now let's talk about this real quick. So +1 armor has some benefits compared to +2 weapons. There are 2 benefits right off the bat. One benefit is the fact that it's cheaper. So for 100 minerals and gas, you can immediately get an upgrade. That's comparing to the 150 minerals and 150 gas of the +2. So both weapons and armor at level 1 cost 100. But once weapons finish and you're going to select the weapon level 2 upgrade, it does cost more. Subsequently, there is an additional time factor to consider. +2 weapons, or any +2 upgrade for that matter, has more time to research than the +1 upgrade. Therefore, it is cheaper and takes less time to get the +1 armor here. However, there are some downsides here for armor. One of the biggest downsides is the fact that armor is you taking damage as opposed to you dealing damage. You can kill the enemy faster, means you take less damage overall. Armor is more focused on getting hit a lot and mitigating that damage, of course. Which means, of course, he's going to be doing that. You're going to be attacking and defending, getting hit and attacking anyways. You're going to be doing both. But in general, attack does lend itself to be a little bit more favored, a little bit more advantageous. Obviously, you want to kill rather than die. You should be getting more value out of the weapon upgrade and less value out of the armor upgrade, ideally, if that makes sense. Furthermore, Archons do not benefit from armor upgrades because Archons, they only have 10 hit points. The shields do not benefit from Protoss armor. They only benefit from Protoss plasma shields upgrades here. Furthermore, if you look at the Zealot, if you look at really any unit here for Protoss, they only get about 50% effectiveness from Protoss ground armor. This is because they have these shields. So about 50 shields here for the Zealot. That's going to take the time to go down to 0, and that's when the armor for Protoss is going to kick in for this 100 life. Same thing for the Adept. 70 shields, half the health pool, the total EHP of the Adept, is going to be going down to 0, and that's not going to consider the Protoss ground armor upgrade. It's going to go down to 70 hit points, and then it's going to kick in and get the upgrade here. This is another reason why weapons are better, because it doesn't matter if you're in shields or in life, you're always going to be getting the weapon upgrade value, right? It makes more sense that way. but you do not always get the value of the Protoss armor if you are taking damage in your shields. It doesn't actually affect your shields. So if you look at it that way, weapons is also why everyone gets weapons first. It's just more value for Protoss. You get the idea. Let's continue.
Mineral field depleted.
So interesting here, Zest is warping down the Zealot harassment, but not only Zealot harassment, he does warp it in Archon. This is pretty committed pressure down here. He is rallying a bunch more units this way. He's going for an interesting multi-pronged pressure. This is very unique, I'd say. Very unique. Very cool. Because this is not just a Zealot run-by. It's got a lot of Archons here in this army. This game happens very fast, so I do apologize for pausing. Sometimes there's a lot to say in an Overexplained game. Pushing creep back, harassing some overlords. This is very nice. I like this move again because he is pushing back the creep and having a map control on both sides. It's also kind of pushing the army away. Unless the Zerg would just F2 and move down there and then leave the top exposed. Of course, this is one of the best Zergs in the world, so he's not necessarily just doing the F2A move. Always. My only pause for concern is the Zerg army can destroy either sides of these Protoss armies since it is split up at any moment. So if the Zerg pounces, this army will die. Let me explain that again. It's very important that people understand this as Protoss. If the Zerg pounces on any aspect, any one of these mini armies here, the Zerg army will absolutely demolish this army or this army. The only way this can be safe, as the Protoss player is doing here, look at his army positioning. He's on the outskirts of the creep, and when he does set foot on creep, he kills the creep tumor and then he backs off of the creep, gives it time for the creep to fade away, and then he goes to another spot where the creep is, and then he kills the creep tumor, and then he kind of backs off, right? So he's doing this movement where he's not committed. He's not on top of the creep. And same thing over here. He's not on top of the creep. He kind of just is on the outskirt. If he does set foot, he maybe kills the creep tumor, and then he backs off. This is twofold. The first reason he does this is it prevents the Zerg from having map hack vision on the Protoss army. If the Zerg has vision of your army, the Zerg, one, he knows how to set up a counter for you, he knows how to flank you, and he knows how to respond to you, he knows what your army composition is, etc., etc. You do not want the Zerg to have all the information in the world for free by just chilling on the creep. So it's definitely vital to have these observers. Very important. He does make 2 here. Looks like he did go for observer, war prism, observer. The other second reason is, of course, as you know, the creep does provide a speed boost for the Zerg player. It is much easier for the Zerg player to set up a flank or go for a committed attack when you are on creep. So even if you are kind of just running away on creep and the Zerg's there on creep, he will kill you, he will catch you off guard, and then he will ultimately, most likely, win the game. So these are not really, even though he's at max supply, he's not really committing to anything just yet. He's just dancing around, pushing back the creep. Very good play. And he's getting Blink as a follow-up here in the 4th base. There's a lot to say here. Let's continue.
My life for ire. We embrace the glory of power.
Put us off for a multi-pronged pressure at the 3rd base and toward the 4th base.
My life for ire.
Suki is doing a great job here, to be honest.
My life for
The 4th base is getting cleaned up, but the 3rd base is not.
We embrace the glory of upgrade complete.
We've already killed a bunch of drones so far. 14 drones have been killed. 7 additional drones from the early game as well. But he needs to be careful about the subsequent warp in. He's been mostly cleaned up by now. So let me pause it here. This is the only downside to this. The only downside is look at the supply. It's a jarring 100 supply difference right now for the Zerg player. If you look at the units lost tab, it does favor the Zerg player by a large margin. And one of the reasons why is because the Stalkers in general don't really have the biggest value here. They're not really getting a lot of value. What we do see that the third base has been cleaned up here. Is gone, so that's good. But he needs to repopulate. He needs to remax. Right now, there's nothing in production, which is definitely a bit scary here. He does have the means. He does have the money to make an additional Archons. Maybe additional 4 Archons would be nice here, followed by a bunch of Charge Lots. Charge Lot Archon, because he is still on Roach Ravager. Charge Lot Archon is okay against this composition. I don't see any additional tech in here. I don't see any Lurkers. I don't see any Hydralisks in production from the Zerg player. None of that. He's got nothing. Just Roach Ravager. But this is still a very scary timing. The Zerg can immediately counterattack. And this 4th base is very naked. No cannons, no shield batteries. It is definitely... It needs cannons and shield batteries. Very, very soon.
Let our enemy know our fury.
So there it is. He's warping in his Charge Lots and his Archons. 4 Archons. I don't know about this blink. This feels very weird.
The merging is complete.
But, yeah. So there it is. No shield battery, no... He's got to give up this base. For sure. He needs to give up this base. No questions.
My life for iron.
Can he hold this? This is gonna be... I don't think so. I don't think so. Gee. Zest loses. Let's take another look at that engagement. I think it's easy to say it's a lost fight. It's a one fight. Let's take a quick look at that fight again and see what went wrong. Because it was starting to look like a good pressure. It was looking pretty successful. What looked like... Here's the problem. Right? Problem is, Protoss can't really afford to lose their armies. The Zealots, yes. These Archons, not really. That's why I was saying down here, oh, looks like he's going to do a committed harassment. Not just Charge Lots, but Archons. Because Archons are not really units that you can kind of throw away. Even if you can get good value for them, if you lose them, what's to stop the Zerg player from immediately counterattacking, right? And as you can tell, not much. Maybe if we had some Void Rays in production, but, I mean, he doesn't have a gas for it, right? It's tough to say. Let's take a quick look at what could have been done better. Besides, the batteries and cannons would have been great.
Mineral field. The merging.
Ultimately, we're not really going to be theory crafting what could have been done better, but more so explaining what happened, mostly. But, yeah. We're going to be taking a look mostly at the game itself. But just for people that are curious, again, look at that dancing of the creep. He walks on the creep. He does walk back.
Dispersing.
Walks toward the creep. Sees the army, walks back. Again, he's walking back on the creep here. Just barely on the creep. Not too far.
Embrace the glory of battle.
Just gets a few creep tumors. And walks back. Very good play. This is something that I think you do better.
In the shadows.
I really like this play. Problem is at low MMR levels, Zerg players, everyone's going to do F2A, and if you're not careful, you never want to engage with this army, right? And it's not very fast to run away. So you need to be very, very cautious, because if the Zerg just F2As you, he's going to crush either sides of this army. It's taking a high-level Zerg player, which is ironically easier to play against, to just sit back and do nothing as these armies poke and prod. I'm not convinced with these stalkers, because if you think about this, they're very expensive. These stalkers are 125 minerals and 50 gas. And let's just take a look at, mathematically. Let's do how many stalkers do we have? We have 8 stalkers here. That's 400 gas. That's 1 Archon plus another 100 gas to be almost at 1 Templar. So that's at least 1 Archon. And these stalkers are not really worth their cost, it seems. They're not particularly good. They kind of trade inefficiently against roaches, even, and definitely inefficient against hydras. The best thing about the stalkers are blink micro in large numbers. But I think that Zest was preparing for eventual blink stalker transition, but he never really got there because the game ended. But this was kind of a follow-up, maybe like a future mass Blink Stalker. So yes, in low numbers it's useless, but maybe if he was trying to transition and get into a mid-game large amount of Stalker pressure and trade out the Zealots, maybe it could make sense.
Light for hire.
Let's take a quick look at what's going on this here. So the army comes in. We see, again, this looks scary. The Zerg player, make no mistake, the Zerg player only has literally just, mass roaches, mass roach ravager, and literally mass roaches. That's it. And the Zerg player upgrades are actually only +1. The Zerg Protoss is also only +1. His +1 armor has not completed yet, so my only gripe is he does push before this +1 kicks in, which, honestly, if you spend an extra 20 seconds, get the cannons, get the batteries, and then just push after, probably would have been better, because the Zerg player is already maxed. He can't make anything more, right? It doesn't matter if you hit now or if you hit in 20 seconds from now, because Zerg's not going to be making any more force, if that makes sense. Maybe his tech will be along further, yes, but that doesn't really matter. It's not like he's going to immediately get out Lurkers or Mutalisks in the next 30 seconds.
We embrace the glory of battle.
So let's take a look at what happened here. This already feels dirty. This feels bad, right? This feels bad as a Protoss player, because in general, and this is, I hate to say this, but the truth is that Protoss is never very good at this kind of tactic, and I would love to do things like this, like split up my army and attack multiple fronts. But the truth is that it never goes well for Protoss to split up their army and engage, unless you're doing like light harassment, just Zealots. This is a very committed Archon here, so if you just lost Zealots here, that's not a big deal. If you somehow manage to slip out these Archons and pull out these Stalkers, that would be great. But he doesn't, and this army just loses without contest. You don't even need the micro with the Roach Ravagers here. You don't need the Bios to connect, and I mean, honestly, using the transfuses here is just a commodity.
We embrace the glory of battle.
It's a little bit of micro there, literally no micro here. It just crushes, just absolutely crushes. And then you have this gigantic, massive Roach Ravager coming in. So this force is not that scary. And honestly, yes, he does kill the hatchery. But trading an army for a hatchery is not good, as you can tell by the resources lost tab later on here. So it does warp in more units. I was curious about this subsequent warp in. The problem is that this army, they need to be grouped up to fight this ball. You're always going to lose. This is why the Protoss player only uses charge lots for their harassment most of the time, because it's too inefficient to lose anything other than charge lots or adepts in the early game. You would use adepts in the mid game if they were more useful. But the adepts are too slow. So here's the issue as well. So he's doing a great job. He's taking a lot of damage. The Zerg player, rather, is taking a lot of damage economically, right? The Zerg player has lost some drones. He's been forced to pull away. And the Zerg is effectively on 3 bases, as we can say. Even though Protoss is not necessarily on 4 bases yet. Even if Protoss is on 3 bases and Zerg is on 3 bases, that's obviously a favorable exchange for Protoss here. But the downside is he trades his army for it. Completely trades his army for it. Everything is destroyed. And he has no time to reap the rewards of the economic disparity to allow him to remake his army, and therefore he just dies to the counterattack. Now, could Zest have pulled away at this point, gone home, maybe take this army, go down, and come back to the 4th base, make some batteries here, and finish this off and go back? I feel like the answer is yes. But it's very hard in the moment to feel like you look at this army and you feel like, okay, he's only got, I don't know, 14 roaches and 8 ravagers, right? So it's very hard to just be in the moment. Like, okay, my armies can beat 14 roaches and 8 ravagers, but these, 15 units in production, these 24 roaches in production, it's very hard to factor that in the math in your head in the moment, and have all of these roaches pop out immediately and then just start going to town on you right next to you. So that's very challenging. That's very tricky.
We embrace the glory of battle.
So he does try to re-engage here.
Upgrade complete.
And he commits again. So if he did a defensive warp in at home, maybe some Templar to warp in some defensive Archons for later on, and pulled back, even if killed this hatchery and went back, he would have been in a very good position.
The enemy has discovered us.
Bit of a misfire here. He's kind of spreading damage, a little bit on the hatchery, a little bit on the roaches. Can't blame him. It's hard. These guys aren't yet in the fight. And this army just... the problem with this army here as well, let's take a quick look. Once it kills a hatchery, this is a big mistake.
Upgrade complete.
So it kills a hatchery, right? And now it's going to stay around and kind of just attack some of the broodlings, attack some of the roaches. It really needs to... what it needs to do is you right-click the hatchery, and then you need to shift right-click and tell them to move away. What this does is it tells the Protoss army to kill the hatchery and immediately go home, and not just be on a move and then kill the broodlings and whatever else, kill the extractors and all this other useless nonsense. Does try to commit here. As you can see, it just doesn't go well. Depths don't do it.
Mineral field. Let our enemy know our fury.
He goes home with like 4 or 5 stalkers. It's just not good enough. So yeah, honestly, just good defense from Reynor overall. Good poke by Zest for sure, but he definitely needs to know when to pull back, and that's oftentimes very difficult for Protoss to know when to go back home